Wonderful day, wonderful day, wonderful day indeed. This right here is your neighborhood sensei Fouché. And I always begin my shows by first strongly suggesting, because a lot of folks don't like being told what to do, true indeed. You know what I'm saying? Claiming grown. Too grown to learn something new, too grown to do something different. So moving forward in conversation, I most emphatically implore to all of you beautiful, wonderful, self-loving, worthy individuals to stay woke. But in the process, never get all stressed out, you know what I'm saying? Make sure you take all necessary meditative practices and procedures, including environmental change when and if necessary, to relax. And always be prepared to take those notes. You know what I'm saying? Notation taker. You know what I'm saying? Itemization maker. You know? Today is the 5th of September, 2025. And I'm going to begin this show by first applauding the Epstein survivors, as we call them, from the Jeffrey Epstein sex abuse case from whatever amount of time ago now, 30 years ago, 25 years ago. These courageous women went public with not only their feelings, but also expressing the need for full disclosure of all these protected people that not only this administration is covering for, but this administration is going to state about past administrations. So we're going to speak about them too, as far as connecting the string to the current thread that is being sewn in place right now, you know, because they just want to kind of pass the problem as if, you know, they have little accountability into what's currently going on. And that's a lie. You know what I'm saying? Because if they were truly honest, they could do something different about it right now. But instead of do that, you have this cornball, and yeah, I'm gonna call him a cornball. And first, before I go into all of that, first let me state, I am neither a Republican or a Democrat. I don't trust none of them. You know what I'm saying? I don't trust none of these folks. You know, even when Obama, and you know, they're like, oh, he's black, he's Obama. Look, man, when Obama was in office, and I hold him to be more of an honorable person than this cornball, this orange colored cheetah looking individual, to be most kindly speaking, that's in the POTUS right now. You know what I'm saying? Even when Obama was in office, I definitely didn't agree with a lot of things that was kind of being, you know, passed through in those moments. You know what I'm saying? Going back whatever amount of time now. When was he elected? In '08? You know what I'm saying? '08 going first into '09. It was his inauguration. You know what I'm saying? But I don't trust none of these folks, yo. You know what I'm saying? And then you got this guy that is being extremely dismissive in respecting not only what these women went through, but actually acknowledging it as truth instead of a hoax, as he's saying. Oh, you know, this whole thing is a hoax. That is minimizing the dreadful and extremely traumatizing experiences that these women went through. But claims to be a man of the people, a man of all Americans. You know, anybody that is classless when addressing even their enemies is a very disturbed person. He claims to be Catholic, you know what I'm saying, or Christian. My fault. I don't want to misclassify. He claims to be strongly in Christian faith, but even Jesus showed love to his enemies. But this guy is just malicious slander over and over again. He's not a man of God. He doesn't believe in Christianity. He knows or acknowledges that it exists, but he's going to use it as a ruse to conspire against what you call your truth. I mean, if you're true about it, you already know that you should show love to your enemy. And anybody that chooses to disagree, bring out a passage in the Bible to prove me wrong when it comes to Jesus of the Christ. Because we're going to speak about him specifically right now in this opening monologue. Like, I've never heard a POTUS be so classless in identifying others, even those that are objective to his views, opinions, and agendas. You know what I'm saying? And that's what we are starting to talk about now, is immature people. Right? Immature people. That's what we've been covering lately in regards to itemizing it in specific relation to a certain specific individual, parents. Boom. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, there was a little noise in the background because I slapped the book into my hand. You know what I'm saying? Like I had to have it stick to my hand like Velcro to pick it up and cover adult children of emotionally immature parents. And I say that I replace parents with people. Because your parent is just a specific titled person to you or your siblings as opposed to other common people. Your parent is a common person the same way you are a common person within society. How special of an individual you are contributing within society is truly up to your growth and your stature in continuing to absorb a higher state of mature being. And the POTUS to me is a perfect example of an extremely unhinged, immature person. And it's easy for these demagogues to fool these confused people, these desperate people. They're so desperate for somebody to save them because they don't have the confidence or are brave enough to help and save themselves. They're so desperate for the cure that they don't realize that a leech has connected to them and is about to suck them dry. And that's real talk, man. You know what I'm saying? Let's not get it twisted when it comes to this society thing and people and immaturity to the highest of degree. Because in these here United States, the person that is holding the highest level of office in regards to following or supposed to be in recognition of a constitution that citizens follow, we are dealing with an extremely immature person in how they relate to others, creating enemies instead of mending misunderstood ideals to keep friendships. Instead of forging friendships, this person is more focused on creating enemies and having no accountability. And the reason why I am so energetic in this moment is because bullies and liars and non-accountable people really irritate me. I don't like bullies, you know what I'm saying? Someone that attacks specific people for no other reason than to minimize them and extend your extreme displeasure for life or for people. I don't like liars, you know what I'm saying? I don't like people that say one thing and then, in another breath, they got a whole other thing going on. And, when you remind them of what they said from before, like they'll try to run game and tell you that they didn't say that, knowing that they did, which goes into non-accountability, because those are the same type of people that can't even admit that they were wrong or that they did something wrong. You know what I'm saying? So they try to run you in circles and then become angry at you because you figured them out. Those are extremely toxic and dangerous individuals. And the person that is holding the office of the POTUS right now is an extremely dangerous person. So anyway, moving on. Was your parent difficult, immature, or emotionally unavailable? If you grew up with an emotionally immature, unavailable, or selfish parent, you may have lingering feelings of anger, loneliness, betrayal, or abandonment. You may recall your childhood as a time when your emotional needs were not met, when your feelings were dismissed, or when you took on adult levels of responsibility in an effort to compensate for your parents' behavior. These wounds can be healed and you can move forward in your life. Because this whole novel explains different tools on how to heal from distant, rejecting, or self-involved parents/people. There's a lot of tools. And I guess bringing the POTUS up, that Cheetos colored looking weak coward. When I start reading within this chapter 8, and we're in part 2 of this chapter 8, it is going to strongly reference, as we have covered in all these other chapters, the type of person this individual represents. And chapter 8, again, is titled, How to Avoid Getting Hooked by an emotionally immature parent slash person. Subtitle within chapter: The Maturity Awareness Approach. And I was going to state, for all of these followers, these fanatics within this whole MAGA thing, they're so emotionally charged up that they can't even see what the truth is. And one thing that we were mentioning is, when you are able to eliminate the emotional attachment, the strong emotional attachment that you have within these relationships or situations, then the transparency of truth becomes a whole lot more clear for you to see and acknowledge. You know what I'm saying? But when you continue to cloud yourself within this high emotional connection, you're going to continue to cloud the reality and continue to believe in what people tell you as opposed to what you actually see. Once you've gotten the hang of being observational rather than relationship oriented, you can turn your attention to maturity awareness. This approach will grant you emotional freedom from painful relationships by taking the emotional maturity of others into account. Estimating the probable maturity level of the person you're dealing with is one of the best ways to take care of yourself in any interaction. Once you peg a person's maturity level, his or her responses will make more sense and be more predictable. If you determine that the other person is showing emotional immaturity, there are 3 ways to relate to the person without getting yourself upset, which is easy to do when you be dealing with, liars, unaccountable people that are highly immature. And I was also going to mention bullies, right? 3 ways to relate to the person without getting yourself upset: expressing and then letting go, focusing on the outcome, not the relationship, managing, not engaging. And they're about to itemize this. I was about to itemize it for you, but they're about to itemize it. But before we go into their itemization, let me spit my game. Expressing then letting go. Being assertive in letting someone know how you're feeling and why. And once you do that and you're free of doing that, instead of holding on to those feelings and letting it fester, and then you wind up creating a high level of resentment, you know what I'm saying? Just say what you got to say. Be very honest, not intentfully malicious, but just straightforward. And then once you're through with it, then be through with it. Don't hold on to it anymore. You know what I'm saying? Whatever they choose to deal with it from an emotional standpoint, immature and more probability, don't even try to get into a long exchange that's unnecessary. Just let it go. You already said what you said. You already drew your line in the sand, and they should understand that. And then that is what that is. Once they say what they say, then it's basically you stay in your lane and I stay in my lane. And then if you wind up being a lane crosser, that's where you have crash car dummies. So don't be a crash car dummy. Stay in your lane. Focusing on the outcome, not the relationship. Knowing that what you have to say, after you say it, this is what is understood from the line in the sand that I drew. You know what I'm saying? And I can't focus on you continuing to be my friend, to use that reference in this statement. You know what I'm saying? Because of how disrespectful you are and unacknowledging you are, then at this point, it's not about the friendship or sustaining the friendship. It's mostly about you understanding exactly where my place is and how through I am in the way that you handle things or absorb them. Managing and not engaging, which is basically just saying whatever you have to say within the exchange of communication without getting too overly emotional, within the exchange where it turns into an argument as opposed to a disagreeable debate. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, expressing and then letting go. Tell the other person what you want to say in as calm and non-judgmental a way as you can, and don't try to control the outcome. Explicitly say what you feel or want and enjoy that act of self-expression, but release any need for the other person to hear you or change. You know what I'm saying? And I'm going to relate to the survivors. Because if they were expecting for the POTUS to actually be in any form of sympathy, empathy, or compassion for them, that's not how he's built. You know what I'm saying? Because you're compromising everything that his malicious agenda is trying to fulfill. So you're the enemy. So he's going to attack you instead of try to be very empathetic and compassionate to your situation. You can't force others to empathize or understand. The point is to feel good about yourself for engaging in what I call clear, intimate communication. Others may or may not respond how you want them to, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that you express your true thoughts and feelings in a calm, clear way. That goal is achievable and within your control. Let me take a sip of water. And we're not trying to make this over political. This is more informative into mental health. But I am using this individual as a strong example as to being able to divide the definition of mature behavior and immature responses. Focusing on the outcome, not the relationship. Breaking this down in book terminology. Ask yourself what you're really trying to get from the other person in this interaction. Be honest. If it's your parent, do you want your parent to listen to you, understand you, regret his or her behavior, apologize to you? Yeah, right. Make amends? Yeah, in certain situations when you're dealing with mature people, sure, but we're covering this because we deal with immature people. So, ha ha ha, joke's on you. If your goal involves empathy or a change of heart on your parents' part, stop right there, pump those brakes, and come up with a different goal. One that's specific and achievable, realistic to the type of person you're dealing with. And you should know them best because you've been dealing with them since you were, out of womb. Remember, you can't expect immature, emotionally phobic people to be different from how they are. However, you can set a specific goal for the interaction. Identify the specific outcome you want from each interaction and set it as a goal. The key is to go into the interaction always knowing the end point you wish to arrive at, which is basically making your point, making your statement, and not getting into an enraged, argumentative state of mind. So again, focus on the outcome, not the relationship. As soon as you focus on the relationship and try to improve it or change it at an emotional level, an interaction with an emotionally immature person will deteriorate. The person will regress emotionally and attempt to control you so that you'll stop upsetting him or her. If you keep the focus on a specific question or outcome, you're more likely to contact the person's adult side. And it's basically just staying on step by step point, not going all over the place and just barraging them with like sporadic fire from all angles, but concentrated attention points. Of course, if you're dealing with an empathetic person, it's healthy to address emotional issues in the relationship. With emotionally mature people, you can talk about your feelings honestly, and then they'll share their feelings and thoughts with you as well. As long as both people have enough emotional security and maturity, this kind of clear, intimate communication will result in knowing each other better and feeling emotionally nourished. Instead of emotionally engaging with immature people, set a goal of managing the interaction, including duration topics. And right now we're speaking on managing, not engaging. So again, instead of emotionally engaging with immature people, set a goal of managing the interaction, including duration and topics. Like you tell yourself, look, I'm not going to spend no more than 10 minutes on this person saying what I have to say. Because if I'm saying more than I have to say in 10 minutes, then I am in an argumentative moment. And I don't want that to happen. Because I shouldn't be arguing. I should just be spitting the facts and drawing the line in the sand and calling it a day. You may need to repeatedly redirect the conversation where you want it to go because that person is going to distract and deflect. And you need to not be fooled into the deflection and the distraction and stay right in line on point. You notice how all of these government officials that you hear on TV these days from the GOP, they always deflect and distract. They distract by deflecting. But if you keep them on point and try to, they're never going to directly speak on what you're asking specifically. They're just going to continue to redirect and distract. Gently ease past attempts to change the topic or bait you emotionally. Be polite, but be prepared to address the issue as many times as it takes to get a clear answer. And they're not going to give it to you, I promise you. You know what I'm saying? They're going to continue to deflect and distract. Deflect and distract. Emotionally immature people don't have a good strategy for countering another person's persistence. Their attempts at diversion and avoidance ultimately break down if you keep asking the same question. As a reminder, also manage your own emotions by observing and narrating your feelings to yourself rather than becoming reactive. And anybody that's been following this government here in the United States, I mean, that whole thing is extremely connected. Because as many times as you keep asking these folks, the same question is always deflect, deflect, deflect. And again, they don't have a good strategy for it. So the more you keep asking that same question, the more frustrated they're going to become. And then they're going to start attacking you for being on point and being direct. They're going to call you mean, you know, um, say a whole bunch of things um, to assassinate your character. I'm not going to go through all the examples because whichever one that you could think of in your personal situations, that's most probable the direction of where it's going to go. Stepping out of an old role self. You know what I'm saying? And when we're going into this part, we're understanding awareness and transparency. That's when you step out of this role self, that comic con, that character, that clown, that doofus that we were stating way back in our conversation of The Power of Now, right? By Eckhart Tolle. And we have conversations of that whole novel if you go back into the podcast episodes from earliest this year. The ability to step back and observe not only your parent, but also your own role self is where emotional freedom begins. When you see how you've gotten stuck in a role self and are trying to make a healthy fantasy come true, you can decide to do it differently. Stop living on Fantasy Island, you know what I'm saying, with Tattoo and Mr. Rourke. That's not reality. Be real about what you're dealing with and who you are having discussions of exchange with. The ultimate goal in any interaction with a parent or an emotionally immature person is to keep a grip on your own mind and feelings. You know what I'm saying? Because when you get distracted and deflected, it gets frustrating. But you don't want to get emotionally out of balance. You know what I'm saying? Because then you wind up in that time trap. You're part of the time trap, past and future. You know what I'm saying? You're still holding on to the past, hoping for a future, not understanding the present, which has always been. You know what I'm saying? Because the past is a part of the present, which is, having your continued future cycle in that same loop. So again, the ultimate goal in any interaction with a parent or an emotionally immature person is to keep a grip on your own mind and feelings. To do this, you need to stay observational, noticing how your feelings and how the other person is acting. From this perspective, you can retain your individual point of view and be more immune to the other person's emotional contagion. With parents, keeping your mind on your specific desired outcome for the interaction will help you retain an objective, observing stance no matter how they behave. It keeps you in your thinking brain instead of falling into your emotions or a fight or flight reaction. In this way, focusing on your goal for the interaction helps you hold on to your true self while old healing fantasies and role expectations are swirling around you. I advise caution if your parents show uncharacteristic openness in response to your adoption of an observational and goal-directed approach. If they start treating you with more respect or open up a bit, you could be vulnerable to getting sucked back into your old healing fantasy. And what they are simply trying to say there is if they begin to seem as if they're waking up out of that cloud that surrounds their transparency, don't get baited into believing that they're fully clear. You have to still continue to treat them as if they are, and they knowingly being blind. Still, there's only a little bit of clearness. It's like a thick fog that eventually starts to thin out, but it takes a real good moment. It just doesn't go from deep fog, extremely thick, into just being completely clear if you're still in that specific space or moment or place. Be careful. Your inner child will always hope that your parents will finally change and offer what you've always longed for. But your job is to keep your adult outlook and continue relating to them as a separate, independent adult. At this point, and that's basically saying, like, don't get emotionally sucked back in and being so invested into that relationship like it could be fully trusted. Like, you still have to be extremely cautious of them like a stranger. You know what I'm saying? Holding a knife. Because they're liable to cut you. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to free themselves from their own bondage. So again, be careful. Your inner child will always hope that your parents will finally change and offer what you've always longed for. But your job is to keep your adult outlook and continue to relate to them as separate, independent adults. At this point, you're looking for an adult relationship with them, not a recreation of parent-child dynamics, right? You can't go back, Bob. You can't be 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 years old again and do that all over. Like, that's already done with, gone, past. Forget about it. Wrap it up, throw it away. It's garbage. Done. If you allow yourself to slip back into those old childhood hopes, your parents' increased openness is likely to evaporate instantly because you'll no longer feel safe to them. Remember, your parents are probably emotionally phobic and unable to handle genuine intimacy. If you become more open, they'll react by pulling back, trying to get you off balance and back under their control. This is the only way such people know to protect themselves from the vulnerability of too much closeness, too much transparency, as another word to use. In the end, the overall dynamic remains the same. Your parents will be emotionally available to you in inverse proportion to how much you feel the need for them. You know what I'm saying? Which means it's going to be totally lopsided in what you're trying to get as opposed to what they're taking from you. Only if you operate from your adult objective mind will you feel safe to your parents. It's unfortunate, but the reality is they are simply too terrified to handle your inner child's emotional needs. In your interactions, just keep observing the present moment and then follow the inclinations of your true nature. Your true self knows everyone involved and the reality of the situation, so it's likely to come up with exactly the response that's needed. But the only way to true self can do that, and let me read this sentence over, but the only way the true self can do that is if you stay in an objective, watchful state that's grounded in your own individuality. Our early dependence on our parents makes us seek their love and attention. However, we must step away from our childhood roles. If we don't want to repeat them, in our adult relationships. The maturity awareness approach will help you deal with an emotionally immature parent or any difficult self-involved person more effectively. You'll have better results if you try to relate to your parent in a neutral way. You know what I'm saying? Not overly invested emotionally, but being in a logic base rather than trying to have a relationship. First, you need to assess your parents' level of maturity. Be transparent, be honest into how developed mentally they are, because it's going to help you a whole lot more in your state of logic towards the direction needed in the steps of that conversation. So first, you need to assess your parents' level of maturity and approach interactions between the two of you from an observational perspective, focusing on thinking rather than reacting emotionally. Then you can employ the 3 steps involved in the maturity awareness approach: expressing yourself and then letting go, focusing on the outcome rather than the relationship, and managing the interaction rather than engaging emotionally. And that is going to finish our chapter 8. And when we come back, going into chapter 9, how it feels to live free of roles and fantasies. And it's basically giving up that Peter Pan syndrome and actually dealing in mature life as opposed to immature fantasy. You know what I'm saying? So one thing to remember in what we've been covering in today's conversation is detaching yourself emotionally to be so overly invested emotionally, and in detaching that, you should be in the best observational moment to be able to converse and categorize the individual that you're in exchange with, and be real within the exchange, to not be sucked into it becoming argumentative as opposed to assertive in the standards that is being divided within the conversation of boundaries. Because once you're able to be realistic and know the type of person that you're dealing with and not be so emotionally attached and invested, then it's easy to create the boundary knowing what you choose to deal with and what you won't deal with, regardless of whoever it is, and holding them accountable into who they are for you or who they be against you. You know what I'm saying? So the thing that we need to learn most is being most aware of our emotions, and that's mostly because of how we closely connect with specific people and feel so dishonored or disrespected that it infuriates us, and then we become time trapped. You know what I'm saying? And overly invested emotionally within those relationships and holding on to those feelings a whole lot longer than needed to be. You know what I'm saying? Because for our continued clarity and cleansing, we need to detox from these extremely dangerous type of individuals. So on that note, I'm going to just say I can't wait to start and have our conversation for next week. Hopefully I'm on point and keeping up with my time schedule commitment and recording the show. You know what I'm saying? But until then, this is your neighborhood sensei Fouché, and I always first strongly suggest before I emphatically implore for all of you beautiful, wonderful, self-loving, worthy individuals to stay woke. Don't let them put you to sleep. You know what I'm saying? Because then that makes you a sheep. Take any and all necessary meditative practices and procedures, including environmental change, when and if necessary, to stay relaxed. Because you never want to be all stressed out. You know what I'm saying? And always be prepared. Of course, you see, we start in chapter 9 next time, and we have the beginning of our notations. So always be prepared to take those notes. You know what I'm saying? Be smooth, in unity, one.